Deep in a forest that has no name, there is a hut. It stands on chicken legs. It spins. The fence around it is built from human bones. The gate is locked shut with a human jaw, teeth still in place. And the skulls sitting on top of every post? Their eyes are glowing. You need something from whoever lives inside, so you take a breath and you knock. Most people who come to this door are desperate. A dying parent, a cruel stepmother, an impossible task. They arrive at the edge of the dark forest with nothing but their wits, and they stand before the most terrifying woman in all of Slavic mythology. She is ancient, gaunt. Her iron nose is so long it scrapes the ceiling when she lies down inside. She identifies every visitor by scent alone, and the first words she says every single time are, "Foo, foo, I smell a Russian spirit." She is Baba Yaga, and here is the thing no one tells you. Despite all the bones, despite all the threats, despite the iron teeth and the talk of eating people, in thousands upon thousands of recorded stories, no one is ever actually eaten. So what is she really? A monster? A goddess? A teacher? By the end of this video, I think you'll see Baba Yaga completely differently, because her story isn't just about a terrifying old witch in the woods. It's about what happens when a culture takes a goddess and slowly over centuries turns her into something to be afraid of. Let's start with what Baba Yaga actually looks like, because the image of her is so specific it has to mean something. She is tall and impossibly thin. In many tales, one of her legs is described as being made entirely of bone, not just bony, but a literal skeleton leg, as though half of her already belongs to the world of the dead. Her hair is a wild tangle. Her nose, sometimes iron, is grotesquely long, so long that when she lies inside her hut, it touches the ceiling. Most folklorists believe this nose is actually her primary sense organ. Some argue she is blind entirely, navigating the world through smell alone, sniffing out every visitor the moment they cross the tree line. She lives deep in the forest, always remote, always difficult to reach. Her home is one of the most iconic images in world folklore. A small hut balanced on chicken legs, sometimes goat legs, sometimes ram horns, sometimes spindles, that spins constantly, its door always facing away from you, toward the darkness of the trees. To get inside, you have to speak the words aloud. Little house, turn your back to the forest, your front to me. Surrounding the hut is a fence of human bones. The lock on the gate is a mouthful of sharp teeth. Human skulls are mounted on posts all around the clearing, their eye sockets blazing with fire that lights the dark like lanterns. And she doesn't travel like other witches. No broomstick for Baba Yaga. She flies in a giant mortar, a heavy stone grinding bowl, steering it with a pestle and sweeping away the traces of her flight behind her with a broom so she cannot be tracked. Her possessions are extraordinary. She owns mirrors that transform into lakes when thrown to the ground, combs that become dense forests, handkerchiefs that become rivers, a flying carpet, fire-breathing horses. And she commands 3 riders, one dressed in white, one in red, one in black, who bring the morning, the day, and the night across the sky. She is not simply a villain who lurks in a forest. She is a force of nature who has been given a forest to live in. Now, how old is she? Based on the roots of her name alone, scholars believe she dates back at least to the medieval period. But the true origins almost certainly go much deeper than that. There are literally thousands of Baba Yaga stories scattered across Russian and Slavic oral tradition. And the earliest documented evidence of her in Russian woodblock prints from the late 1600s and early 1700s shows she was already a widely known figure. Those prints weren't introducing her. They were depicting someone the audience already knew intimately. The first written mention of her name appears in 1755 in the grammatical notes of Russian poet and scientist Mikhail Lomonosov. He listed her alongside Roman gods and their Slavic counterparts, but gave her no counterpart at all, as if she existed outside every category. Her first full written narrative came in 1780, in a collection by Vasily Levshin, where she appears with tusks for teeth and bear claws for hands. but it was Alexander Afanasyev's massive collection, over 600 Russian folk tales recorded between 1855 and 1863, that finally brought Baba Yaga to international audiences when translations reached Europe and beyond in the 1870s. She was compared to the Brothers Grimm collection, but Afanasyev's work was considered more scholarly. He documented his sources, noted where he heard each story, and treated the material with the seriousness it deserved. And through all of those thousands of stories, across all those centuries, one pattern holds steady. Baba Yaga tests everyone who comes to her door. She rewards the worthy, she destroys the unworthy, but she never, not once, actually eats anyone. Let me tell you the most famous story, the one that changed everything. It is called Vasilisa the Beautiful. A merchant's wife is dying. She calls her young daughter Vasilisa to her bedside and presses a small wooden doll into her hands. She says, "Keep this doll with you always. If you are ever in trouble, feed it, speak to it, and it will guide you." Then she dies. Time passes. The merchant remarries. His new wife has daughters of her own, and, as these stories always go, they are cruel and jealous. They give Vasilisa the heaviest chores. They try to grind her down. But every night, Vasilisa secretly feeds the little doll, whispers her troubles to it, and by morning the doll has done all the impossible work for her. The grain sorted, the weaving finished, the hearth scrubbed clean. And despite everything done to break her, Vasilisa grows stronger, healthier, more beautiful. The stepmother and stepsisters grow bitter and uglier from their own cruelty. Then one night, everything changes. The family has moved near the edge of the deep forest, the forest where Baba Yaga lives. They are working late by candlelight when one of the stepsisters deliberately snuffs out the flame. In the sudden darkness, they argue about who must go into the woods to fetch fire. They send Vasilisa. She walks into the dark forest alone. Along the way, she witnesses something extraordinary. 3 riders pass her on the road. First, a man dressed entirely in white on a white horse, and dawn breaks behind him. Then a man in blazing red on a red horse, and the sun rises. Then, as Vasilisa reaches the clearing, a man dressed in black on a black stallion thunders past her, and night falls instantly. She is standing at Baba Yaga's gate. The bone fence surrounds her. The skull lanterns blaze above her. The arms and legs form the bolts and locks of the gate. And then, with a horrible roar, Baba Yaga erupts from the tree line, riding her mortar, steering with her pestle, sweeping her trail away behind her. Vasilisa bows deeply. She asks for fire. Baba Yaga narrows her ancient eyes. "You may have fire, but first, you work for me, or I eat you." The tasks are enormous. Cook a feast for 12, sweep the courtyard, clean the house, sort the wheat, wash the linen, do it all before morning. Vasilisa feeds her doll. The doll does everything, except the cooking, which Vasilisa does herself. Baba Yaga returns and inspects the work. She is silent. Then, for the first time, she is satisfied. She takes one of the glowing skulls from the fence and hands it to Vasilisa. "Here is your fire. Go home." Vasilisa carries the skull through the dark forest. When she arrives home, her stepmother and stepsisters rush to take the light. They've been in darkness for days. But the moment they touch it, flames erupt from the skull's eyes and burn them to ash, all except Vasilisa. She goes on to weave linen so fine it catches the attention of the Tsar himself, and eventually becomes his bride. Now pause here for a moment, because I want to ask you something. Did you notice what just happened? Baba Yaga did not help Vasilisa because she was kind. She didn't help her because she felt sorry for her. She helped her because Vasilisa earned it. She arrived with humility. She worked without complaint. She did what was asked. And when Baba Yaga asked her why she hadn't pried or asked too many questions, Vasilisa said simply, "My mother told me not to ask too many questions." Baba Yaga smiled at that. She sent her home with fire, and that fire destroyed the cruelty in Vasilisa's life. The scariest figure in the forest turned out to be the most just. But now here is the question scholars have been wrestling with for centuries. What is Baba Yaga actually for? Why do these stories exist? What were they teaching? Almost every Baba Yaga story follows the same structure. A young person, usually standing at the threshold of adulthood, about to marry or leave home for the first time, takes a journey deep into a dangerous forest, encounters Baba Yaga, is tested, and either earns a reward or faces destruction. Scholars call this an initiation narrative, a story built specifically to mirror the psychological experience of growing up. The forest in folklore almost always represents the unknown, the part of life that lies beyond the safety of your childhood home. And Baba Yaga sits at the very center of it. She is the test the forest gives you. Her challenges aren't random. They mirror exactly the skills a young person would need to run a household: cooking, cleaning, sorting, weaving. She is, in a very real sense, a teacher, a brutally honest one. She does not coddle. She does not forgive laziness. She does not pretend the world is easy, but she rewards genuine effort every single time. You could argue, and many scholars do, that the Baba Yaga stories were used to prepare young women for the reality of marriage in Slavic culture, entering a new household, answering to a demanding authority figure, proving your worth through work. The test is not metaphorical, it is a rehearsal. But there's another layer: the girl who fails, the stepsister who chases away the mice and refuses to work. She doesn't just go home empty-handed. She is destroyed, broken to pieces, her bones put in a box. Baba Yaga does not punish cruelty for entertainment. She punishes it because cruelty has no place beyond the threshold of adulthood. The stories are brutal because the lesson is real. You cannot enter the next stage of life carrying laziness, arrogance, or entitlement. Baba Yaga is the forest's way of enforcing that. Now let's talk about her name, because it contains a mystery of its own. The word Baba in Old Russian referred to a married woman of childbearing age or older. It was used specifically for midwives, sorceresses, and fortune tellers, women who stood at the boundary of life's great transitions: birth, illness, death, women who knew things others didn't. In modern Russian, Baba has become a somewhat derogatory word for a difficult old woman, and you can feel how that shift happened over time. The sacred became the shameful. In some indigenous Eastern European languages, Baba is also the word for pelican, which may be the most surprising and somehow most satisfying piece of this whole puzzle, because suddenly the long beak-like iron nose makes sense, and the hut on bird legs makes sense. She was always, on some level, a bird. The word Yaga is harder to pin down. Scholars disagree. Some connect it to a word meaning horrifying, others to the Russian verb meaning to ride. Some link it to early Latin roots meaning snake, others to words for disease, illness, rage. But the most haunting theory is this: many names of ancient Slavic deities have been entirely lost to time, and some scholars believe that Baba Yaga is not her real name at all, but a substitute, a placeholder used because her original name was so sacred, so powerful, so feared that it could not be spoken aloud. And now that original name is gone forever, swallowed by centuries of silence. What we are left with is the stand-in, the nickname, the shadow of something older. And here is where it gets very interesting, because when you look at Baba Yaga not as a monster but as what she might originally have been, the picture shifts completely. She controls morning, day, and night. She has power over the elements. She stands at the boundary between life and death, with one foot in each world. She is connected to the earth, the sky, and the underworld simultaneously. She has power over animals, over time, over weather. These are not the traits of a villain. These are the traits of a goddess. Scholars in the 18th century were already making this connection, noting early signs that Baba Yaga may have been a pagan deity before the arrival of Christianity began erasing the old religions. Goddesses don't disappear when a new faith arrives. They get demoted, they get distorted, they get moved to the edges of maps and given bone fences and threatening dialogue. They get called monsters and the chicken-legged hut. That detail, which seems like pure fantasy, may have its roots in something very real. Nomadic hunters in Siberia built small storehouses on top of tall tree stumps to keep food away from animals. The Swedish Sami people built similar elevated structures. These real-world raised huts may have filtered into folklore over generations and attached themselves to this ancient figure. Even more striking, the most common burial practice in Neolithic Central Europe, was to place bodies on wooden platforms raised on poles so they could dry and the bones be preserved. Baba Yaga's hut, elevated, surrounded by bones associated with the boundary between the living and the dead, may literally be a memory of an ancient burial house. Her hut is not a fairy tale invention. It is a cultural memory so old we no longer know we're remembering it. So how does a pagan bone goddess from pre-Christian Slavic folklore end up in a Fortnite skin? The short answer is, she never stopped being useful. In the Soviet era, Baba Yaga was actively repurposed. The qualities celebrated in her stories, hard work, cleverness, courage, problem-solving, were exactly the traits the Soviet government wanted to promote in its citizens. She appeared in films, cartoons, and television. The folkloric hero who overcomes the terrifying obstacle by sheer grit became a kind of socialist success story. After the fall of the Soviet Union in 1991, Russian and Slavic media became globally accessible in ways it never had been before. And Baba Yaga flooded into Western popular culture almost immediately. She appeared in Neil Gaiman's writing, in the Hellboy comics and films, in television shows like Supernatural, The Magicians, and Lost Girl. She turned up in John Wick, where the title character himself is called Baba Yaga as a title of terror. She has appeared in video games, graphic novels, animated series, and yes, Fortnite. But think about why she keeps surviving every reinvention. Because she represents something timeless, the terrifying mentor, the figure who will not lie to you about how hard the journey ahead is, who will not soften the blow or lower the bar, who will give you exactly what you earn, and nothing more and nothing less. We still recognize that figure. We still need that figure. The world has never stopped producing people who want to be Vasilisa, who want to walk into the frightening forest, face the impossible test, and come out the other side transformed. Baba Yaga is still there, waiting, spinning in her hut. Here is what I keep coming back to. Baba Yaga was never supposed to be simple. She is not evil, and she is not good. She is not safe, and she is not cruel without reason. She is something much more honest than either of those things. She is the forest. She is the test. She is the part of life that doesn't care about your excuses. She was once a goddess who commanded the sky, the earth, and everything in between. Then the world changed. New beliefs arrived, and she was pushed to the margins. Given a creaking hut and a threat to eat people and a reputation as a monster. But the stories kept her alive. All those thousands of stories, passed around fires at weddings and feasts and late winter nights. They kept her power intact even as her name was forgotten and her nature distorted. Because the thing the stories were teaching was always true. Growing up is terrifying. The forest is real, and the only way through it is to show up with humility, do the work, and face whatever lives at the center of the dark. Scholar Andreas Johns, who wrote one of the most comprehensive books on Baba Yaga, put it simply: there can be no single correct interpretation or understanding of Baba Yaga. And maybe that is exactly the point. She is a goddess for people who know that life does not come with a single correct interpretation. She is a teacher for people who understand that wisdom is not given. It is earned in the dark, in the forest, in the moments when everything is frightening and you keep going anyway. She is a mirror, and what you see in her depends entirely on what you bring to her door. Thanks for watching. If this kind of deep dive into ancient mythology is your thing, subscribe. There are more doors and more dark forests ahead.